Hi, my name is Dirk Henckels. I'm Managing Director of QUALISYS in Germany. We are a service provider to chemical companies and a content provider to software companies. Also, I'm the release manager of the ESDSCOM project, which strives to improve efficiency in the supply chain. And that is my topic today. There are several issues in the supply chain. That's regulatory demands, customer demands, and of course, cost and efficiency. And I'll try to show a way out, or at least a way to improve that situation. Thank you very much for tolerating that I will bother you with English. But my French is definitely worse than your English. I'll talk about the chemical supply chain, your obligations coming from various sides, which are making your life complicated and expensive, finally, and how you can get that a little easier. That's all in the future, because I'll be talking about a project I'm working on for well over 10 years now. I think it's 2009 when it started. And it's still not finished, but we are probably seeing that being finished in 2 or 3 years. The requirements are where all the trouble comes from. This causes a lot of problems, what I call a trilemma here, because it's 3 problems. And I'll explain a little bit about the solution or a possible solution. But first, a little about me and my company. You won't know that. We are located in Germany and are a service provider for authoring safety data sheets. A 40-people company, 20 of them are scientists just authoring safety data sheets for chemical products. Some 5-figure number of safety data sheets we did over the past 30 years. We are also one of the very few service providers having our own infrastructure, our own software, and collecting our own content instead of buying that in. So we are licensing this to about 20 software companies across the globe. And this gives us a high amount of flexibility, basically, to adjust to various issues. And from that type of mindset, I chose to participate in the project I will outline. I'm by education a computer scientist, so excuse me if it's getting too chemical, I have to decline the answer. Yeah. I'm a managing partner at QUALISYS, and the project I'll be talking about is called ESDSCOM. It's Electronic Safety Data Sheet Communication, and was started by CEFIC, the European Association of the Chemical Industry, and BDI, which is the German Federation of Industry. Some links. Well, the first one is more general and outlines more details of that project. The second one for the technical people is basically the code that we offer. Now to the requirements I will be talking about. First, of course, are the legal requirements. You know them. You know REACH, you know CLP. The most important parts here, just to sum that up, is the substance registration. Only if you are a first-tier supplier, so if you manufacture pure substances, you're obliged to register. Unfortunately, if you import such substances from non-EU countries, you're pretty much in the same situation. You would need to register. The second obligation, which affects all the supply chain, is the safety data sheet, the core document in the supply chain, where you should collect all the information that is necessary for the rest of the supply chain, for your customer, their customers, and so on to the professional end user. It includes the composition, of course, not 100% composition. Everybody tries to hide as much as they can, yeah. But you have to give percentage ranges, you have to specify the most important ingredients. And it includes all the information that leads to the classification of your product. So any supporting physical properties, chemical properties, toxicological data, ecotoxicological data, stuff like that, plus transport classification that others might need. And in recent years, ECHA did a good job in adding to that effort. Yeah? They introduced the poison center notification because they found out that if people call poison centers because somebody was intoxicated, then the poison centers basically have no info. This simply didn't work. Yeah? So you would call the poison center and say, I swallowed something, and now I'm feeling bad somehow. And they would try to help you anyway. And that's not good enough, obviously. Yeah? That's why they introduced it, but the interesting part is they introduced a whole set of new obligations. You need to be more specific on the chemical composition, stuff you don't want to disclose. Yeah? And you need to add more information about the packaging because that helps the medical people. Yeah? Basically, there are two types of accidents. Either a company is calling the poison center, then you know a lot about the accident, but not about the symptoms, because they are laymen. Yeah? They cannot really describe that. Or a hospital calls, then you don't know much about the accident in the first place, but you know a lot about the symptoms. Yeah? And this is why they need information on the packaging. So you could at least describe, okay, this is a glass bottle of 200 milliliters, and that helps identify the product which caused the accident. Stuff like that adds to the legal obligations. What do you need for a safety data sheet? I briefly outlined that already. The composition. Ideally, before authoring, you yourself know the full composition. That helps you assess the problems, the potential problems, hazards. Yeah? By the way, if I'm using any term that you don't understand, yeah, just make yourself visible. And I'm happy to take questions not only at the end, but also in between, because I do see the point that you might want to ask when you don't understand. So ideally, you have the full composition. If you are a private label manufacturer, then you don't have that. Your supplier will not disclose that. Yeah? You know the physical and chemical properties. If you don't know them, you need to test them because you cannot calculate them from the composition. You need to find that out on the product itself. And you would have all the supplier safety data sheets from your ingredients. With that, you could start authoring a safety data sheet. So this is what you need to collect from the supply chain, and I'll come back to the point where you need to collect the safety data sheets of your suppliers. What you take from these safety data sheets, for example, is the toxicological data for human beings and the environment, because this is collected from the raw materials and assessed with calculation rules. As I mentioned, PCN requires some additional data. I mentioned the packaging already and more specific composition information, which you don't get from your supplier's safety data sheet, which is a big problem for white label manufacturers. And it requires you to assign a category to your product, one or more actually. And this is from a new categorization system called the EU Product Category System. It's used only for these notifications. We do have a lot of other categorization systems, like for registrations, we have the use descriptor systems. TARIC, NACE, in the context of customs, are other categorization systems. The EU invented another one for that purpose. There are good reasons for that, but it's an additional burden. Yeah? I would love to see all these systems being harmonized to a certain degree, or at least shared. Yeah? And then there are some details like if you don't have a pH value, you need to specify why you don't have it, something that you won't find in supplier safety data sheets either. But the regulatory requirements is not all. Often, and this depends strongly on your supply chain, often your customers will ask for more information. Currently, this is, in most cases, writing emails back and forth, which takes a lot of time. Yeah? Or, even worse, you get a questionnaire. Yeah? This was very fancy in the beginning days of REACH, yeah? Where everybody wrote letters to the suppliers saying, please confirm that you will comply with REACH later. I mean, what can you answer? It's law. You have to be compliant. Yeah? So this kind of action, communicating on a one-to-one basis with your suppliers, is pretty inefficient, and still it happens. Sometimes for better reasons, like asking for compliance, sometimes for just additional demand on information you might want to have. And this is what happens. The downstream user, your customer, needs to do poison center notifications if your products get renamed or are an ingredient to a new product. Only in these cases you need that notification. Then we are coming back to all the data demands that you can't take from the safety data sheet. Yeah? So you need to find out, you need to guess, you need to ask something. Yeah? And then there are certain gray lists or blacklists of substances in some supply chains. So substances that the customers, and usually that's agreed on an industry association level, absolutely want to avoid. Yeah? So they want to check that. For checking that, they would need a full composition, which you don't want to provide, obviously. Yeah? That's a dilemma that's hard to overcome. Basically, it'll end up in letters written to you asking, please confirm that the following 55 substances are not part of your product. Well, not part of your product is something you can confirm for anything that you intentionally put into your product. But what if your supplier added that and you don't know it? You basically can never be sure about that. Still, the customer wants it, their quality management wants it, because they might have a big business problem if somebody else finds out that this is in. That's their reasoning. They don't do it to disturb you. Yeah? They do it because they see a business risk in their business. And then, of course, if you are exporting, or even worse, if your customer is exporting your product, there might be additional requirements from other countries. In the EU, we have for acute toxicity under GHS the categories 1 to 4. I don't know who of you is familiar with the building block approach of REACH and CLP for that matter. You can cut off certain aspects that you don't want to implement in your legal area. Ours is the European Union, and they decided to leave out acute toxicity category 5. Which means that if we are testing our products for toxicity, we will probably test only up to a concentration of 2,000 milligrams per kilogram body weight. If you're exporting, you need results up to 5,000 for category 5. You don't have that. A problem for your customer, in that case, if you export. The other way around is getting interesting in the near future too, because if you import a product from China, you will have safe information about category 5, but we are just implementing 3 additional hazard categories that don't exist in the world otherwise. That's completely against the building block approach. That's completely against GHS. Remember, GHS is globally harmonized. It tends to become less global and less harmonized these days. Yeah? But what happens here is we are introducing categories for endocrine disruptors, hormonal effects of substances, and for one well-known environmental category, PBT, and one new type of environmental hazard, that's PMT, that's mobility. Yeah? And you will not have such information usually from other areas in the world. My favorite example for that is the automotive supply chain, because they are very, very picky. They want a lot of information. They require all their customers to deliver a full formulation of the products. So if you want to sell to an automotive supplier, you will always have the question, please specify the full composition. Hard to achieve. Yeah? Especially if supplier 1 manufactures the substance and you have this white label, private label situation with supplier 2. So basically they buy a barrel of something liquid, refill it into 200 milliliter glass bottles, well, probably not glass, but yeah, bottles, and make it a lot more expensive, give it a new name, and sell it. Then this supplier number 2 doesn't have the full composition. Still, the automaker who buys that in wants that. Solution, either non-disclosure agreements in every direction. Yeah? So if supplier 2 is happy to disclose who supplier 1 is, the automotive manufacturer will talk to supplier 1, and that really exists. Yeah? The other way is having companies like ours being in the middle, yeah, maintaining all that information, anonymizing papers, underwriting that and giving it to the automotive company. That's what we do frequently, actually. In any case, confidential information is disclosed, and you can't really avoid that, even though it's beyond the legal requirements. So that's the trilemma I'm talking about. You have confidentiality interest, yeah, that you want to keep. You have the legal requirements which force you to disclose certain information. And then the administrative part is getting so much of a mess with all these non-disclosure issues, with keeping track of all the information, that it's highly inefficient because it's communicated on different paths. It's partly the safety data sheet, it's partly communication with the customer and the supplier, and all this needs to be collected and maintained so that you still know that you don't disclose information you cannot disclose. Yeah? Now, towards a solution. I mean, after I spent quite some time to make you anxious, I should spend some time to make you less anxious. One part is information management. First of all, REACH defines certain roles, and you don't have just one role. You have hopefully just one per product. Yeah? You could be a manufacturer or importer with all the registration obligations. You could be a dealership if you just buy in a product because you sell machines, for example, yeah, and you're not interested in the oil necessary to keep the machine running. You probably don't even want your brand name on that. You simply sell it with the machine so that your customer can buy it in from the same shop. Yeah? In that case, you are a dealership, and you basically have no obligations, almost no. Yeah? Or you are a downstream user, still a professional user. And this becomes interesting if your company is bigger and more knowledgeable than the company which supplies any material to you, because then you have quite some obligations in checking the data that you get. And in any case, you have the obligation to communicate your experiences, your observations with the product, if they are related to hazards, to the supplier. This is well ignored, actually. Almost nobody does it, but it's part of REACH. Yeah? So these roles that might exist, and this is just the core, it's a brief summary, these roles vary from product to product. You could be a manufacturer of product number 1, an importer of product number 2, a dealer of product number 3, and a downstream user of various products, including those, at the same time. Yeah? So on the information sharing side, there is a certain complexity you cannot really avoid. You need to carefully keep track of disclosure of information, for your own sake, of course. If you have an NDA, you want to be sure that you follow these conditions, otherwise there's some penalty. Yeah? This also means there should be means to restrict access to sensible data. Yeah, and this is often an issue because you would need to be very specific who can access that for which product. And if your IT system cannot really guarantee that, you need to restrict very widely and things become more difficult. So that's an area where you could work on. Yeah? Try to find ways to make access to sensible information restricted but easy at the same time. And then the second question, of course, is supplier cooperation. There are a lot of suppliers just denying to share any information, which doesn't make any sense. You need to mitigate your risks. You need to maintain workplace safety. So you need information for your own purpose. That works in most companies, more or less, of course, but that works. There is something like OSH, yeah, Occupational Safety and Health Management. But feeding back missing data to the supplier evaluation, so integrating your learnings from cooperating with the suppliers into an assessment of which company is a good supplier is lacking in almost every company. And this is something that's important because you rely not only on the product itself, but also on the data on the product. Yeah? So the willingness of cooperation should be actually a criteria to work with suppliers and to make that very clear to suppliers or prospecting suppliers when you choose them. Because once you have a contract, it's far more difficult to get more data. Once this is part of the original contract, it's very easy. Yeah? They want to sell to you. So that's the one part of the supply chain, the supplier. And now the other part. What could you do if you want to maintain your information confidential and still your customer needs a solution? One thing that happens is, oh, dear customer, you don't need to do your own safety data sheets. We will do it for you because we have all the information. Just give us your company address for section 1, give us your product name, we will do the notification for you, we will prepare a safety data sheet, you're done. Advantage for the customer, a lot less work because all the data is there already. Advantage for you, you can keep your information secret. So that's a big help actually. The only disadvantage is there are customers who are very keen on safety data sheets to look all the same. So they want their safety data sheets all be from the same system, yeah? Which doesn't work if you have 10 suppliers. Yeah? On the other hand, my goodness, these are technical documents. We are not doing big literature here. Nobody is getting a Nobel Prize for that. Yeah? So you could probably discuss if this is really a necessity. Or in other words, if this is more important than keeping all the information together in secret. Yeah? And then you could, of course, work with your customer's customer, talking about the automotive supply chain, to clarify use of the product, to make sure all the data is there that they need. Yeah? But this really needs a lot of trust in the supply chain. In some business areas, that works very, very well. They are open. Every actor knows every other actor. They are sitting together over a beer every month. Yeah? In other supply chains, everything's secret. We will not move. We will not share anything. Yeah? And this is why I put here, it's a legal requirement. From a certain point onwards, it's part of REACH Article 34. If you don't know what to read this evening, REACH Article 34 is really interesting. It's news to most of the people. But the part where it's far easier, by some means, to work on is the communication efficiency. Currently, you are receiving a safety data sheet, reading it, retyping it, creating your own safety data sheet. That doesn't make much sense. And the problem is that currently there is a big discussion about electronic communication of safety data sheets. And then guess what's happening? A lot of people are saying, well, PDF is electronic, isn't it? Yeah, but you can't really do something with it. It's paper. So the goal of efficiency of course, is to save the retyping, to make administration easier. Remember that retyping not only means a waste of time or money, it's also a source of errors, yeah, that you would want to avoid. Then, if you have everything in your system, you can use that data for automatic evaluation. And because we have very few data only in the supply chain currently, there are not many tools. As soon as we have more data, there will be more tools. And now I'm pointing to Quarks, yeah? Because as a tool provider, they would be happy to have more information, I guess, because they could offer better solutions on that basis, yeah? But for that, you would need more data than you would usually retype, because retyping is a hassle. Why should you do it? You will only retype what's absolutely necessary, yeah? And then if all that information is available, you can also manage that information safely and spread it better within your company. These are the three aspects where you could work on efficiency, basically. Well, after you saved a lot of money with these cheap tips here, how do you want to spend it? You want to spend it on brains. Yeah? You could actually use that money to optimize your products and your workplace if you have all the information in place. That's artificial intelligence. The system believes it should choose what I show. Yeah? Good news, ECHA actually thought about that 4 years ago. And there was a workshop in Helsinki, actually the only workshop in Helsinki I attended, which ended with a conclusion that I put in full words here, but basically says, yes, we should enforce structured electronic data. And they even decided for one technology, XML, yeah, to distribute the data among the supply chain. Yeah. That's the good news. They basically agreed on that. There was a lot of resistance, funny enough, especially from the German chemical industry. Yeah, there are some people, it's not the industry as a whole, there are some people who insisted for decades on paper is enough. That's what the law requires us to do. We won't do more than the law. Yeah? Sometimes it makes sense to do more than the law. Yeah? But they insisted on that. So it took quite a while. And now we are in the situation that ECHA had a workshop. They had this so-called REACH Review Action 3. The review actions basically evaluate how good REACH is implemented. Yeah? Should we improve on that? Are things okay? There's a review action every year with different focus. And this outcome said, okay, information is there, but it's lost along the supply chain. We should improve on that. The bad thing is, after that, a political fight started, also between ECHA and the European Commission. ECHA became an authority which basically seemed to have finished most of their obligations. The registrations were done at that point. So they are running out of money because the money they get is from registrations. If nobody registers, then they won't have any money. And this is something the Commission doesn't like, because it's an authority which had at peak level, I think, 550 people. Now it's around 400 as far as I know. And so they are fighting for ways to keep their budget high enough. And in this political discussion, they decided, okay, supply chain communication is not our core business. We cannot do much about that because we are running out of money. And this is when it stopped. It only came back now with the discussion about the REACH revision, REACH 2 sometimes. And this is REACH 2 as it's supposed to be. It's part of the chemical strategy of sustainability, which is the chemical part of the implementation of the European Green Deal or Green New Deal, which came with the von der Leyen Commission, which is in force from 2019 to 2024. And now you see the problem. We have a draft version of REACH 2 saying we should do electronic communication. if they delay discussion of the draft version further, and I'm not saying they want to delay it, it's just delayed. Yeah? If this is delayed further, there won't be enough time for that version to become a final version and be implemented. And if it's not implemented under this commission because of the next election, we don't know what happens. The next commission could be different, could set a different focus, and everything will be on jeopardy again. Let's assume for the moment that this will still happen, because the plan, which is delayed already, but the plan now is the draft version should be ready until mid of this year, and then hopefully be finalized and published still under the von der Leyen Commission. So if that happens, this will strongly modify the authorization and restriction process, which has various kinds of doing the job. All of them are complicated, some are overlapping, and they had several discussions to streamline that, which also means that the process becomes a little harder. It's stricter. If the Commission or any country in Europe plans to restrict access to chemicals, the process will be quicker, and it's less easy to interfere if you feel that there is an issue. The latest issue you might know about is titanium dioxide, yeah? With the big court process, the lawsuit on that, and it's still in limbo if this is cancelled or not, the current classification of titanium dioxide. So yeah, sometimes it makes sense to interfere, and that will become harder. Part of that draft will or should be also some electronic transmission of such data that I mentioned. But there is an issue. Even if they decide for XML, XML is just a technical way of representing things. I'm looking into some really funny faces now. You don't need to understand all of the details. I'll explain what I mean with that. Every box on that slide is one XML file that you need to prepare if you do a Poison Center notification. How does the system know that all of these belong together? They are linked with numbers. Yeah? So basically you create a unique number. There are technical ways to do that. And then if you want to link two files, you need to put that same unique number in both files. And these are the arrows. So this is a Poison Center notification. Actually, there are two flavors, but the red part is the part for a mixture with 3 ingredients. That's the number of files you need to present, the number of connections you need to maintain. All of that you put into an archive file and then upload it to the ECHA system. And if you are lucky, then they will accept it. Otherwise, you might stumble over one of more than 500 business rules which are validated to make sure that your data is okay. This is very complex. Why is it so complex? Because the Poison Center notification format is part of the Euclid format definition, which strives to be the one and only regulatory data format in the world. It actually covers registrations for Australia and New Zealand. It covers full safety data sheets if you want. It covers the registrations under REACH. How can a system become so flexible? Because it's very, very complex. You could argue if it needs to be that complex. I would argue it doesn't. Yeah? Nevertheless, a big system always is complex, as you know. Yeah? So, why should you use that system in the supply chain, where you don't have all of these problems? You're probably not wanting to register in New Zealand right now. Yeah? You could use a simpler system. And yes, I would argue you should. If you do the same in the ESDS-COM format I'm here for, then it looks like this, just one file. No numbers for linking that. I agree, that's only part of the story. This is a bigger file, of course, than the others. Yeah? Nevertheless, it's much simpler. It's almost self-explanatory. The way the fields are named is exactly the purpose. Yeah? If you need information, it's in there. As a human being, you could read that file. It's kind of bad English. Yeah? While the Euclid format uses a lot of number encodings for stuff. Yeah? And if you look at that, you will find numbers. Yeah? That's not really fun to read. So yes, I'm proposing that format, but this is still not decided. And because there are two formats, actually there are not more. Yeah? There's just the ECHA format and this industry project where I'm the release manager. Just these two formats exist for exchanging those data. Yeah? And until ECHA decides which format will be the future, basically no company wants to invest. Very obvious. Yeah? Why should you put money into that? So because nobody really wants to invest, we have a problem here. Yeah? If you have a supplier and a customer, and you send safety data sheets as a PDF document, as electronic paper, then the recipient, the customer, will retype information. And depending on how much information you retype, the numbers that I know are between 50 euros and 800 euros per safety data sheet. Yeah? The interesting parts are the one in yellow. Yeah? The recipient saves money on every single safety data sheet. But both have to invest into the infrastructure. Yeah? Why should the sender implement it? They are not saving money. And that's the hen and egg problem. This is why nobody does it. As soon as the sender earns money with sending XML instead of PDF, everybody would implement it. So what this project is doing is basically arguing that if you are the recipient, you should share the money you save with the sender. Otherwise, they won't help you. But that doesn't work. Industry waits. Yeah? That's the situation currently. What can you do today? As long as we wait for ECHA to decide, as long as we wait for the infrastructure to be defined finally, you could still assess if your company is ready to exchange data based on XML specifications, because it will be XML, that's sure. Yeah? How do you work with your suppliers? Do you document what information comes from your suppliers, and if it's accurate, what the quality is? How do you document the information that you share with your customers? Can you really make sure all these non-disclosure agreements are followed? This is something you could clarify today to be prepared, yeah? Because that will be necessary. And then it's not the only application along the supply chain. You might have more than one IT system using that data. Yeah? So you could think about establishing such a system already to connect IT systems within your company. The bigger the company, the more benefit you'll get out of that. The current applications that we see for ESDS-COM are within companies usually, and it works, yeah? Because you can share information that way. So that's what you could do today. And although this is probably not what you wanted to hear, yeah, because it's not a really good solution, that's the situation we are in. And in 2 years, we will know more. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm working on the SDS extractor tool in Quarks at Quarks. I look at the GitHub link you provided at the beginning, and there is an XSD file. I think the main issue with this is that wherever I read the XSD, I wasn't able to understand what it was talking about. Do you have an example of XML SDS file to share with us?
Yes and no. Actually, not for the latest version, but for an earlier one. Remember, this project is not funded. Yeah? Basically, it's done in the spare time of people being convinced that this should be followed. this approach should be followed. So sometimes there is a certain time lag. Yeah? There's a delay in preparing and updating all the necessary information. If you have XML editing tools, yeah, they could digest the XSD file, the schema definition, and create example files, obviously with garbage data. But then
that was the issue. It was about data because
okay.
I'm not a chemist by formation.
Yeah.
I'm a computer engineer.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit aware of what's inside an SDS because I'm working on the tool to extract them. And I was interested in implementing the same model as you are pushing because obviously we want to have a modelization of the data inside the SDS that is the most like globally accepted. And I couldn't find a way to fit the data I'm extracted from actual SDS and the XSD you have on the GitHub.
Okay. I mean, this probably needs some more detailed work on why you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
In the XSD file, there are annotations, which is basically documenting what the field is meant for. And the data type definitions are quite strict, so that would allow only values which make sense. Yeah. Question is here the matching between the information that you retrieve from the PDF file and finding the right field. And this is best worked on with examples. Yeah? Let's exchange contact details and we can keep in touch on that.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you very much then.